I'd love to take a quick step back and talk about that plan because you brought up something that I think a lot of leaders maybe struggle with or maybe get wrong, which is the bottom up versus the top down plan. Very, very often what happens is that top down where you get, okay, well, we want to grow revenue by 50% this year, which means it's this for bookings. And oh, and by the way, now we need 1 million new leads, right?
Right.
And then marketing goes like, how
What?
exactly are we going to do this?
Right.
Right. So
Yeah.
I'd love to hear sort of your process on, because you have to do both, right? Is you have to do the bottom up
That's
and the
exactly
top
right.
down. And
Yeah.
then talk us through maybe a little bit of how you find that happy medium between the bottom up and the top down, and maybe if you have an example of where you were in a situation where there was a huge gap between the two, between the top down and the bottom up, and how you resolved that.
There's always a gap.
There is, yeah.
There's always a gap. Yeah, and you're right. You have to do both. And the top down is pretty straightforward. And yes, that's where marketers freak out because they get assigned growth rates that don't apply to any sort of logic. And so the part of the bottoms up is not just building the stages and how many leads does this take and therefore what is how many opportunities are you going to have and so on and so forth. But once you go do that, that's really step one. Step two is doing the bottoms up from a program standpoint, right? So this is also how we think about budget. So if let's say that the bottoms up, the first set said you need 1 million leads. Well, then what we're going to go do is we're going to build a plan that gets us, probably not to 1 million leads or whatever, but that says, here's what it would take. What do I have to believe to get to that number? And what happens when you get all the way to the top is, oh, lo and behold, we need a budget that is 6 times greater than anything planned in the next 5 years. We need to triple the size of the team. And now at least you have an objective way to say, guys, that number doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? But the flip side of that is you build it from the bottoms up and you have that gap. I can tell you that happened this year. We looked at it and we said, look, we're trying to grow aggressively. There certainly are unknowns, between 2020 and 21, just, everything, all the uncertainty in the world. So our assumptions were probably a little bit more debatable this year than most. But we just broke it down and said, if there's a gap that's, 10% of the total, oftentimes it's, I wouldn't call it a negotiation or a debate, it's a discussion. But we will, to some degree, where we see opportunity, it could end up splitting the difference where we say, hey, look, head of sales, let's plan for the BDRs to qualify and drive, at a higher rate and get 5% better at, straight up outbounding, and which doesn't require an MQL. And so it's kind of it's a channel that gives us some additional scale, doesn't cost more money. And then on the flip side of that, we say, in our world, we're in this cybersecurity category that is rapidly growing. It's a newish category. And so it's taking off like crazy because it's a better way. But organic search is taking off as well. And so I'm perfectly fine saying, hey, we need to get better. There's all kinds of opportunity there. So while our spend is going to grow at 20%, our number is going to grow, our goal is going to grow at 30%, let's grow organic search at 40%. And we also happen to know that organic search leads convert at a higher rate, both to an opportunity and to close, so on and so forth. And so it's a little bit of a puzzle, but we put all our cards on the table and kind of problem solve it, and ultimately get there together. And that's actually a pretty real example of what we did this year. Was we knew we were going to see some growth on the organic side. We knew also we'd probably see some improvement on the paid side, even just because of we're seeing good gains in the back half of last year. And so we trended that line forward from Q4 instead of saying, how did we do in total last year? So it's a fun numbers game. If you like the numbers, kids, it's a good time.